Welcome to Fireside Nets, brought to you by Empire Sports Media. I am your host, Spen Harris. My brother Nick is in Spain. He's at a wedding this week, so I am joined by recurring guest Peter, host of the Only Nets Fan You Know podcast. Peter, thanks for coming back on the show.
Of course, man. It's always fun. I always love to chop it up with you. Let's talk some Nets.
Yeah, let's talk about the team that's no longer in the playoffs, despite it being, the conference finals. I do want to get into that towards the end of the show, but this is a Brooklyn Nets podcast for those who don't know and tuned in to listen to basketball talk. We got to start with the Brooklyn Nets. And, while it may seem like nothing is really happening within the Brooklyn Nets universe, this has been some pretty big news dropping as of late. And I think the biggest news was the Athletic tweeting out after, much speculation heading right into the offseason after the Nets lost. There was a lot of people wondering, well, what are they going to do? The Nets, are they good enough to be a team that can build around Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson and compete for a title? Should they just tear it all down and rebuild and start from scratch? What should Sean Marks do? And I think, Peter, that this news by the Athletic, tweeted by Shams Charania, that the Brooklyn Nets do not plan on trading Mikal Bridges, I thought was very significant news. It kind of shows you the direction that Marks and Joe Tsai want to head with this franchise. They want to compete. They're not going to do a full rebuild, which, whether it's the right choice or the wrong choice, it's a choice. What was your reaction when you saw that tweet from The Athletic?
I wasn't surprised. If you guys listened to the Sean Marks end of season press conference, he said that they were going to go for it. We're not going to rebuild. The Nets are in a very weird situation. Their young players aren't, 21, 22. They aren't on rookie deals. These guys are already making about $20 million. Cam Johnson's going to make around $20 million this year when everything's said and done. So do you rebuild by trading them, or do you just compete? And it didn't look like a rebuild was coming. Not surprised.
Yeah, let's talk about Mikal Bridges specifically. So what from his play did you see in his half season with the Brooklyn Nets that makes you a believer in the Nets being a championship contender with Mikal Bridges as your number one option? Are you even a believer?
I'm not a believer of that, actually. But I do believe he has a nice little spot here with this team. He could really grow. We've seen him put up, 40 points, 30 points. But then we also have games that, he's not the number one option, right? There's a couple times when we really needed a basket, he just can't get it. I don't know if that's because he's still young. The guy's still getting into his prime. He's still young. I think he's going to be a number two on a championship team. I think he's going to be an all-star. And maybe I'm wrong. He's got to really work on his three-point shooting, in my opinion. I think if he could get a little bit more solid in that field, you give him a nice point guard, that's a building of a nice team.
Yeah, I thought there were definitely moments down the stretch where Spencer Dinwiddie was your go-to option in the fourth quarter. And I love me some Spencer Dinwiddie. He should not be the go-to option on a perennial championship team ever.
No.
Ever. So that I get that criticism of Mikal. And it also it's so similar to back right before KD and Kyrie when we did have that D'Angelo Russell, Dinwiddie, Karis LeVert led team. Jared Allen was on that squad. And D'Lo was the best player on the Nets. He was an all-star. But you knew that they weren't going anywhere with him as the top option. I think this last season's version of Mikal Bridges is better than that season's D'Angelo Russell. I just don't know how much better. And the Nets, got swept that year by who? The 76ers. I'm sorry, they won one game, 1 out of 5 games. This year, they get swept by the 76ers in the first round. Mikal did not have a good shooting series. Me and Nick went into it a lot during the series, but I don't know. I think that I agree more with you right now that based on this last season, it doesn't look like he can be the number one for a great team. Can he maybe get there if he really, gets after it this offseason? Look, this is going to be his first offseason where he's training to be the number one guy on the team. I don't see the Nets making a crazy move in the offseason to bring in someone who's going to surpass Mikal Bridges to be that guy. And we'll get into some options in a little bit, but I don't know. I don't necessarily hate it. I like the idea. I think he might have the potential to be better than he was last season. How much better? That's going to be the question.
Do you think he could be like a 1B type of guy? You know what I mean? Like he's an all-star, but is he really, not on that KD, Kyrie superstar level? He kind of falls just under it. Almost like Jimmy Butler. I know he's going off and, he's the hot topic now. But in the regular season, we were not putting Jimmy Butler in the same paragraph as these other guys, right? Can Bridges get into that form? I think he could, because let's face it, maybe he doesn't have the offense, but he does have the defense. He does have the hustle, and he can put up some numbers on a good night.
So I think there are a lot of interesting things with what you said. Can he be the 1B? Can he be that like right behind the 1A, maybe a close 2 option? And you mentioned Jimmy Butler. I tweeted as Jimmy Butler's going off in this postseason, he's going off in the series against the Celtics. I tweeted that Mikal Bridges should take notes on what Jimmy Butler's doing right now, because this is how you take over a series. This is how you become the alpha player on the court through what Jimmy Butler is doing right now. And Mikal Bridges can learn a lot from this Miami Heat run that they're currently on. A name that comes to mind, Peter, when I think of a 1B option, think of a Paul George. Can Mikal Bridges be as effective as Paul George, right? When Paul George plays with Kawhi, he can play his game, he can get his buckets, but he's got that cushion because Kawhi's a 2-time champ. He's been there, he's done that. He can hit clutch shots. He's got, I think Kawhi, when him and PG's admitted this, by the way, this isn't like breaking news. Paul George has said, I'm his 1B. I'm his second option because Kawhi's Kawhi. Can Mikal Bridges be that? I got another name for you, Peter. Can Mikal Bridges be Kyrie Irving? Kyrie Irving has not been a 1 since he was on the Celtics and failed miserably. He has been a 2 on the Cavs. He was a 2 on the Nets, maybe a 3 when Harden was here. But can Mikal Bridges sort of shoulder that load, right? The Chris Middletons of the world, the Anthony Davises of the world, the guys who are asked to do it right behind the main character. And I think he absolutely can. I don't think it's a question. If he's scoring 30, 40 as the number 1 and he's efficient and he's making the right plays and his basketball IQ gets a little bit better, yeah, you can absolutely have him as your 1B. The thing is, the Nets don't really have any options of players that they can bring in that would be that 1A this offseason.
I think that's the issue, right? Like we've been saying, bring in this guy, trade for Portland to bring in, Dame, blah, blah, blah. That's the main issue. That's the main issue, that he definitely needs a 1A. And how much better is this team with a 1A, with Cam Johnson, with Bridges, with this team, the way that it's set up? I think that's the biggest question, right?
I think it is. And look, you brought up Dame Lillard. That's kind of the only sort of trade rumors that are being circulated. Dame and Mikal Bridges have a relationship. They're buddies. Obviously, Damian Lillard wants Portland to build a contender. And I think all realistic NBA fans can see the writing on the wall that Portland has no chance to make Dame happy. They're not going to make a ridiculous amount of moves. They're not all of a sudden going to become the Suns or the Lakers or the Nuggets or any formidable team in the West. So Dame time and BK, it seems like the only logical solution if the Nets are going to try to upgrade this roster and get a 1A. Now, my question to you, Peter, and I know you have the stats or numbers in front of you, but financially, how bad does that hurt the Nets in the sense that they're going to have to pay Dame a lot of money? And also from a performance standpoint, where does that even put the Nets? If you added Damian Lillard to this team, where do they rank in the East? So we can start with 1 and we'll get to 2.
All right. We see the large amount of the fan base, like I said, really want to get this guy. And you know what? He had a great year last year, but take a look at the numbers just for a little bit. Take a look at the contract. Think about the timeline. And the more you kind of look at the situation, listen, I've been a big fan of maybe bringing Dame in. Look at the numbers, and maybe your opinion might change a little bit, right? He's going into his age 33 season. Next year, he's going to make $45.6 million. Age 34 season, $48.7 million.
By the way, he's 34. You're saying 34th season. I don't think he's in the league for 34.
Age 34. There you go. Age 35, he's going to make $58.5 million. Age 36, $63.2 million. Bridges making what? About $20 million right now? That's three times of what he's got. It's too much for a 36-year-old player, and that would eat up about almost 40% of your cap.
I guess. And you said he's 33 right now?
Yeah.
So I guess you make the trade if you think you're guaranteed to compete for a championship in the next 2 to 3 years, right? Because once guys start to hit that 35, 36 number, that's when they usually start to regress. You look at Chris Paul, some other guys, LeBron's kind of the only exception to that rule. Listen, I would welcome the move. I think that if you're Sean Marks, you got to make a splash. And Dame Lillard is that type of player that he would be a 1A to Bridges' 1B. And I also think that that's a top 4 team in the East. I really do. I think, an offseason for Cam Johnson to get better, for Mikal Bridges to get better. Nick Claxton continues to elevate his game. You get a few role players to sort of fill in the gaps. Obviously, you got to move on from guys like Joe Harris, Seth Curry, bring in more athletic, more versatile players who can both score the basketball and defend. Having said that, and as much as I'd like to see Dame here, I also would rather see Marks build through the draft. I'd like to see us use our first round picks and maybe get more picks for the future. So I'm a little bit torn, but I guess I gave you my thoughts. I think they're a top 4 team. I think maybe they're the 4th best team after. And again, it's so crazy because we don't know what's going to happen in Boston. We don't know what's going to happen in Milwaukee. They're interviewing guys like Nick Nurse right now. We don't know what's going to happen in Philadelphia. It's hard to say. And again, Cleveland's coming off a pretty good year. New York, the Knicks are coming off a not bad season. So without knowing all that, I'd put us at probably 3 or 4.
I have a very unpopular opinion with this, okay? I would say the Knicks are better suited to get Dame right now than us, rather just timeline-wise, right? I don't know if Brunson and Dame would make sense on the court, but if you look at the timeline, they're much, much, I guess, more advanced than us, I would say, at this point of just as a complete team. Brunson is that true number 1. But I'm going to give you some pushback on your take with the draft. You want to build with the draft, right? What are we going to get? We're going to get someone who's 21, 22. It's going to take 2-3 years. You take us 2-3 years down the line, that's the end of the Cam Johnson deal. So you're going to have a window of maybe 1-2 years that you'll have Bridges and Cam Johnson on deals that you could kind of build around them with. That's my only issue with building with the draft. And what if you don't hit? Marks has been very good with drafting. We know that. But what if he doesn't hit? Then we just sacrifice the year. It's always, the gamble of is Phoenix going to be good? Is that draft pick going to be a lottery pick? Or is it going to be pick number 22? Because if it's going to be pick number 22, for 2-3 years, I would do that in a heartbeat to get Dame. If it's going to be one lottery pick, obviously that changes your mind. So, there's a lot to dissect.
By the way, I know that the reports came out that we're not trading Mikal Bridges, but had Portland put the number 3 pick up there, and let's presume that Charlotte takes Brandon Miller at 2, would you have made that trade to bring in the number 3 pick, maybe Anthony Simons, and we give up Mikal Bridges?
No, and I'll tell you why. Scoot looks like he's going to be a star, but I can't guarantee it right now. And I feel like Bridges will be at least a 1B at the very worst. And I'm very comfortable building around him and Cam Johnson.
I hear you, Peter. I want to talk. We talked a little bit about it earlier in the podcast, but I wanted to really sort of hone in and just sort of see where your head's at. So, what I've seen in the last recent weeks on Nets Twitter, and by the way, if you're listening to this podcast and you're not on Nets Twitter, it's an electric space. I mean, so many hot takes, so many personalities, so many characters. I'm not going to name anybody because the two most handsome people that run these accounts are on this podcast. But yeah, hashtag Nets World, Nets Twitter is just a wild, wild place. There's been a divide that I've noticed amongst Nets Twitter, amongst our fan base. You have a group of people who want to blow it up and basically just do a full rebuild, get as young as possible. And then you have a group of people that want to build around the current core. Basically, the plan that Marks and Cy are going in, right? They're gonna build around the core we currently have. Nick Claxton, those three guys are essentially our future. When you started seeing all these people sort of picking a side and having reasons and rationale behind each choice, which side do you lean and why?
Man, I almost want to play the middle ground because I could see the benefits for both sides. But I tend to be leaning towards getting a guy, bringing a guy in, because you never know with the draft. With the Nets cap situation, it's very interesting. I think after next year, we have Harris gone, Dinwiddie gone. The only guys under contract are the young guys, Day and Cam, the twins, Dorian Finney-Smith, and that might be. I think I'm missing like one other guy. So this whole cap sheet is going to be gone within a year, and there's a very good, it's a very good chance you could rebuild. You can make a very good argument of saying, you know what, we're going to send Claxton to Houston, get one of our picks back, tank this year, and just blow this stuff up. Get Bridges to Portland for the three. We'll have 3 first-round picks this year if that happens. Get Cam Johnson and Salmon sign and trade somewhere. Bring some younger guys in, and that could be a very good argument. I just don't. I see it, but I just don't think. I don't think it's going to happen. Too many people are dependent on this team winning, and I don't think Josiah wants to rebuild fully.
Yeah, I think those are all fair points. Look, if I had my choice, I would have had Marks gone. I would have just totally.
Really?
Yeah, I think I would have just rebuilt everything. At some point, even if it wasn't Marks's fault, the results speak for themselves. And as the general manager of this team, he hasn't gotten past the second round. And while the second round was the farthest the Nets have been in a while, I don't know how much job security that should give you in today's NBA, where every coach gets fired after they don't make the championship. So for the general manager for 4 straight seasons to have the talent we had on this roster and not get past the second round for whatever reasons, I don't know. I personally, I would have went just the total blow it up route, new head coach, new GM. But I don't, and we'll get to Josiah in a second. I understand that he doesn't want to go that route. And look, as a fan, I'm a 30-year-old guy. I'd rather the team be more competitive sooner rather than later. So that sort of human instinct kicks in where none of us want to wait. Like, a basketball season's a long time. I don't want my team to suck for 3 or 4 years before we're good. Yeah, Thunder fans feel great about it now, but they've probably had a miserable 3 to 4 years ever since, Westbrook left, and you had that surprise year with CP3, but they were a contender, but they weren't really a contender. So I personally, like, if I had my way, I would have totally just went the other direction, be the Detroit Pistons, be the OKC Thunder for a little bit, and go that route. But because they're going this route and they're going to be competitive in the shorter term versus the long term, I'm not necessarily pissed about it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Like you said, we've been through a lot with this Nets team. Losing for the next 2 or 3 years is not something that I don't think many Nets fans can really stomach right now at this point. I think their Nets fans are still on the kind of spoiled championship route. Like, let's be competitive. Let's do this. Let's get Dame. Let's get this guy. Let's do this. And it's tough, man. It's really tough with this team. But I definitely want them. I'm going to give you one pushback for 1 second.
Okay.
But Marks, you would get rid of Marks even though you know that he's great building through the draft?
Yeah. I don't think
That's
Sean
his expertise.
Marks. I know, but I don't know. Based on at some point, I just want to change. And he's been here for a minute, and he's drafted some good players. He's had some duds. I don't know. It's not necessarily me saying he's a bad general manager or he's not good at drafting or he can't do this. It's more of, all right, Peter, well, you're a hard worker, you're smart, you're this, you're that, but you keep getting C- on your tests. I know you're studying. I know you're putting in the work. The results suck. Sorry, buddy. You can't take this class anymore. You can't be the GM of a team that's supposed to be competitive in the East. Like you see what teams like Boston and Philly are doing every year, Milwaukee. These three teams are consistently in the Eastern Conference Finals. I mean, not Philly, but the other two teams.
Yeah.
Or they're finishing as a top 3 seed. So, yeah, I don't know. I just think it's a matter of the results speak for themselves, and at some point you just got to get a new voice in there. And also just given, the backlash from the KD, Kyrie, Harden stuff, that also sort of was a tough pill for me to swallow. The fact that these talented individuals came to Brooklyn and they left with a sour taste in their mouth, not loving Sean Marks. The only person who I think was okay with him upon departure was Kevin Durant. Yeah, I don't know. I don't hate Sean Marks, and I'm excited to see what he can do given this sort of superstar-free, drama-free period of Brooklyn Nets basketball. The only other thing I want to bring up and why it makes sense to go after it in the short term, we're about to have an 8th seed in the NBA Finals in the East. Okay, Peter, the East is wide open. Boston, who's the number 1 team for most of the year, looked like shit this entire not the entire postseason, but this series. They got pushed by the Hawks. They got pushed by the Sixers to Game 7. Now they're getting shellacked by the Heat. The Sixers just fired their head coach. Their second or third best player, James Harden, probably leaving and going to sign in Houston or somewhere else. The Milwaukee Bucks, the number 1 seed, fired their head coach. Boom. First round upset. Right? Who's the 4th team? The New York Knicks. Do we think that the New York Knicks are going to win the championship next year? I fucking hope not. You hear what I'm saying? The Nets' opportunity to compete and get better and get right in that conversation, it's now. It's here. You don't want to wait for the Bucks to become the Warriors of the East, and all of a sudden you got a fucking dynasty just going to the finals every year. You don't want to wait for a guy. And by the way, thank God Victor Wembanyama is going to the Spurs.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? We dodged a bullet. If he was in Charlotte, and all of a sudden
imagine him with LaMelo.
Yeah, I wouldn't have liked that. So that's another reason why it makes sense to go for it now if you're Sean Marks, just because of the volatility in the Eastern Conference.
Absolutely. It kind of takes us all the way back to, if you get a Dame, is this team competing like you said? Yes, we're a top 4 team, and I think that's why I think you would do that deal, because if you are Sean Marks and you do feel like it is open, this is what you're going to do. I don't know if it's going to be Dame, though. I like what you said about, we don't know what's going to happen. There's going to be a lot of movement, new CBAs coming in. The new CBA is going to really destroy a couple teams like Phoenix, these high payroll teams like Golden State. And you're going to see, I think the whole new big threes are going to be out. It's going to be back to, 1A, 1B. And there's going to be some movement. There's going to be a lot of movement. A lot of teams are going to cut salary. And you're going to see the Nets maybe be able to swoop in and get somebody. I just don't know who it's going to be.
I'm emotional when I start cursing up a storm and dropping F-bombs here and there. You just know I'm into it.
Just fucking go. Let's go.
That's my fucking tell. All right, Ben Simmons update. All positive news from the Ben Simmons camp. Apparently his mentality has changed. He's focused. He's ready to go. He's going to be healthy come training camp. Peter, pretty simple question here. Do the Nets include him in their future plans, or do they try to send him and his ridiculously expensive contract elsewhere?
Oh, he's very much so in the plans going forward, but not how you might think. He has 2 years left. That's a guy I missed who's going to be on the team, who still has a contract in 2 years from now. I was missing a player. It was Ben. I don't know how I missed that one, but Ben is going to be on the team next year. They have to see if they could squeeze out any of that all-star talent, see if there's anything left. And you know what? Let's say shit happens, doesn't work out, completely fails. The next year, he has a big contract, but it's an expiring deal. And that alone, a max deal getting off your books might be really interesting to a contending team. You know what I mean? It might be very interesting. Maybe you get some draft picks out of that. Maybe you send him at the deadline. I'm not sure, but there's a lot of flexibility when it comes with Ben Simmons. But I think the best case scenario would be him playing and getting back to an all-star level with the starting lineup with Bridges and Cam, right? And Clax. That would be a very interesting starting four over there.
So I have two thoughts on this. Number one, I do think that Ben's going to get back to a place where if he doesn't look exactly like his old self, he looks like a version of his old self. I think that the athleticism, the IQ hasn't really left. I mean, we've seen that this past season. He's going to get his head, his body right. I can see him returning and really being a weapon for this Brooklyn Nets team. Now, Peter, here's where my sort of issue comes in. If you have a starting lineup of Ben Simmons, Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, who would be your fourth other than Nick Claxton? I guess Dorian Finney-Smith or Royce O'Neal?
I guess, right, we have to put a point guard, right?
I guess Dinwiddie. So you play Dinwiddie.
Yeah, you have to you need a point guard, right? Right.
Ben Simmons wouldn't be your point guard?
Oh, that's tough.
That's the thing, right? So, but either way, so let's say Dinwiddie's in the starting lineup and you go Simmons as your four. What bothers me about that lineup is you have two guys who can't shoot the three. They can't really shoot the mid-range. So you have two guys whose whole game is predicated on being in the paint. That is the only concern I have about a Ben Simmons, Nick Claxton lineup. I know people freaked out in the season because I think defensively they were amazing, those two, when they played together, but offensively not as good. But just in today's NBA where everybody shoots the three and you look at the best player in the NBA right now. It's Nikola Jokic. He's your center. He's popping threes. He's playmaking. That entire Nuggets team, they rarely have anybody on the court who can't shoot threes. It's just the way they play. It's pretty phenomenal to watch. But if you're the Nets and you have only three out of the five guys on the court can hit the three or even hit a mid-range shot, that scares me a little bit.
I think that's a good point that I was obviously not thinking about. But who do you put in then? Do you put a Dorian Finney-Smith in there, who's very good at popping corner threes? So on offense, you have Ben at point guard. But then also, I don't know, I kind of feel a little naked having a point guard who can't pop a three in this NBA. Like you said, that kind of scares me.
Yeah, but
should your main ball handler hit a three?
At the same time, Peter, him as a power forward doesn't make sense either. Like, if I'm going to play him, I want him to be the dude that was kind of like he was in Philly, which is he controls the offense. Yes, he can't shoot the three, but he's always making the right basketball play. On those teams, Ben was the smartest player on those teams from a basketball IQ perspective.
Absolutely.
So for me, it's like if you're gonna make him a real part of this team and you're gonna give him a starting role, you have to let Ben be Ben, and that means letting him be the point guard. If he doesn't have the ball in his hands, he shouldn't be out there. That's just how I feel. He's not good enough off the ball. He's not doing enough on offense to justify playing heavy minutes as the 4 or the 5.
I think you're right. I can't picture another way that you could put this puzzle together and it working. But does that mean you're going to have like a pick and roll type offense? Because we kind of have to like protect him, right? Because look how many times we saw Ben play and the defender was like at the free throw line when Ben was at the top of the key. Like, we have to get Ben downhill, right? I think that's the consensus. When Ben is going downhill, that's him at his best.
We're gonna go into a rabbit hole right now, but basically, I would move Nick Claxton and I would try to bring in a stretch 4, a stretch 5, and he'd be the guy I'd run pick and rolls with. I don't know who that player is. I'm thinking like Kevin Love in his prime would be perfect for the Brooklyn Nets with just like how he was able, like Vucevic. I think Vucevic would be a good center just because Vucevic can stretch the floor and hit the three. But whoever you bring in, like and Embiid, and when Embiid played with Ben, he can hit the mid range, he can hit the three. So whoever you bring in, they have to have a little bit of range. That's the rabbit hole I'm going down. Look, I think I made you a Ben Lever, right? That's a Ben Simmons believer.
I see what you did there.
He was magical on the Sixers up until that playoff blunder. And sure, he had some moments in the playoffs where he didn't come through. But as the third or fourth option, I'm fine with that. That loss to the Raptors that season, that wasn't on Ben. That was because Kawhi Leonard hit a ridiculous shot. So, yeah, I'm excited. If you're going to bring back a guy like Ben, you really just got to give him the keys to the offense and say, hey, you saw what Mikal, you saw what Cam could do last season. Make them better. Make yourself better. Let's be a contender again. Peter, I want to talk about our owner, Joe Tsai. Is he good or is he bad at his job? Now, you put out a tweet stating the following. I think Joe Tsai may be taking too much heat from Nets fans lately. Under his ownership, playoffs every year, team payroll rank 9th, post-deadline, 2-18. Nets have paid over $200 million in luxury taxes, brought back the Dr. J jersey. So you listed 4 accomplishments in his tenure. Now, if I were arguing the opposite way, there are a few things that I can bring up that I don't think Tsai handled incredibly. But you are, the PR support person for Joe Tsai right now. I'm a fan. Why are you telling me that he's a good owner?
He's always investing in the team. He's not afraid to spend. When there was a chance to bring superstars in, we did it. No questions asked. Always paying in the luxury tax. I think, like I said, that was just the $200 million. That was just the last 2 years. Not sure about that. I didn't even count like the other years. If a team is, how could you be upset at a guy throwing money at this team, throwing money at this roster? We come from a franchise that was in New Jersey that made the finals 2 years in a row, had another deep playoff run, and then let Kenyon Martin leave for nothing. Didn't even offer him a contract. I come from that, and I'm saying, man, like, I think we're being a little harsh on this guy. You know what I mean? And he gives, you could talk about the Liberty stuff. I don't want to get too deep into that. But, he gives back to the city. He does a lot of philanthropy. Putting all that stuff together, you could do a lot worse. There's a lot of owners around here that maybe wouldn't do what he did, that maybe wouldn't invest in the team as much as he had. That's where I would start with that.
I think that's fair. I think everything you bring up is a great point. Personally, I had no problem with Joe Tsai. This was the only thing that bothered me, and it was the article that came out recently. I think it was about May 11th, so about 12, 13 days ago. Brooklyn Nets owner Joe Tsai says basketball players are very difficult to manage, was the headline of this article. Dude, you bought an NBA team.
Yeah, wasn't that a joke?
Was it a joke?
I think it was. I think Nets Daily said it was a joke, but still, you got to be a little more. You got to read the room. You knew that there was a chance that could blow up.
He was talking about if you're in Hollywood, it's very, very difficult to manage people. And the joke was, believe me, I manage a basketball team and the players are very difficult to manage. Either way, look, all the Kyrie Irving stuff aside, which obviously I blame Kyrie for 99.999% of everything wrong that happened with him specifically during his tenure in Brooklyn, and the James Harden stuff, which sucked too. If you're Joe Tsai, to have a quote like that out, you own a basketball team. You have a bunch of people that you pay a lot of money to put a product out on the court, on your court. You should not make backhanded jokes at the idea that they're difficult to manage, right? Just kind of a lack of awareness there. Do I think he's a bad owner? No. Do I think he puts his foot in his mouth sometimes and says the wrong thing? Occasionally. That quote really bothered me, Peter.
Yeah, he's not perfect. We had the "winning is my religion" quote. That that did not look too well. Looking back at it in 2020, hindsight. He's not perfect, but like I said, you could do a lot worse. Remember when the Nets got rid of their G League team? We used to have the Springfield Armor, used to be the G League team for the Nets. Then they got rid of the team, and our prospects had to go to other teams' G League's team. I think about that and I compare it to Josiah. I'm like, man, it's hard. It's hard to take shots at the guy. Like I said, he's not perfect. Definitely not perfect. He didn't play stuff 100% correctly the last 2 years, right? We know that. But I can make an argument that you could do a lot worse.
I like that he's not perfect line, right? Like you could have pulled it. Hey Spencer, when's the last time you said something by mistake, huh? Are you always saying the right thing? Like that was a very good route to take. I enjoyed that. All right, a few quick points here. I do want to get to the remaining NBA playoffs. I saw a tweet that someone said D'Angelo Russell and the Nets would be a perfect reunion. What do you think of an idea like D'Lo coming back to BK?
I think I know who posted that, and I talk to them regularly, so I'm going to feel bad that I'm going to trash them completely. That is such a horrible fucking idea. Well, why would you want to bring that in? He's going to get a very big contract. He's not really young anymore. He doesn't really mesh with the team that we have right now. The only way that he would fit is if you get rid of Ben and Spencer and Harris, and you have to take him on with that. I think he's probably going to get close to a max deal. I feel like someone might throw that at him. I could be wrong. Listen, if he can make like $15 million and we could fit him in there, I would. That sounds nice, but I just don't see that happening. He's going to be too expensive, and it's just not a good basketball fit.
You know what my problem is with him? And he's having a terrible series, by the way. Like, he looks
Ice cold.
really bad. He can't defend. It's not even that. He just looks like a lot of players on the Lakers are bringing that playoff intensity, right? Austin Reeves, Schroeder to a certain extent. He hasn't shot the ball well, but he's brought that playoff intensity. He's been a dog on defense. D'Lo has not looked like he's belonged in this series, and it's been kind of sad. But I think about the places it did not work out with him, right? It did not work out in Golden State, where they breed winners. It didn't work out in Minnesota, a place that's starting to sort of develop, a new reputation with Anthony Edwards and Karl Anthony Towns, and they're known as a hard-nosed team, right? They got in the playoffs with winning some play-in games. So I look at D'Lo and I don't know where else he goes. Like, I don't know what teams want to trade for him, pay him, whatever the case may be. I don't know. And again, I would not want him on near the Brooklyn Nets. It just doesn't make sense. Everything you said was 100% accurate. So no D'Lo here. And to who tweeted that, maybe would be the right move for D'Angelo Russell, not the right move for the Brooklyn Nets. Okay.
Agreed.
Peter, thought this was some pretty funny news. The Toronto Raptors, after firing head coach Nick Nurse, did they fire him or did they mutually part ways? I don't really remember how that worked out.
I'm not sure either, but I think we could both assume that it wasn't pretty, right?
Well, it can't be pretty because now they're interviewing former Nets head coach, or I guess they're meeting with him. I don't know if it's a formal interview. Steve Nash, your reaction?
They should do it. That would be great for us. Isn't this like he's Canadian, so we're going to bring him in? He's like one of I guess he is the best Canadian basketball player of all time, right? Am I missing somebody?
No, it's probably him.
Right?
Yeah.
You got to bring him in. I think it wasn't the coach for Canada at some point. I might be wrong with that. But you have to bring him in. I think they're way too smart to hire Steve Nash.
See, I don't. Because they let Nick Nurse go, and Nick Nurse is a hell of a coach. I listen to his press conferences. I listen to the way he talks to players when he's mic'd up. There's a few other guys like Spoelstra, Steve Kerr, that I just really admire. When I watch, the games, I'm looking forward to hearing them talk after the games. Nick Nurse is one of those guys. He knows how to motivate his team. Yeah, Toronto had a down season this year. I don't think that the team that won the championship was a super talented team. I think that Kawhi played out of his mind. I think that Pascal Siakam kind of showed people who he was that season. And you had Kyle Lowry and Fred VanVleet as your third and fourth guys. I don't think that's a championship team. They won a championship due to playing out of their minds, a few injuries for the Golden State Warriors, Kawhi hitting one of the most insane shots I've ever seen against Philly, and good coaching. And as Nets fans, we know good coaching helps. Bad coaching hurts. Look at the Boston Celtics right now. You want to talk about poor coaching. So I think it's absolutely hilarious that they're meeting with Steve Nash. Like you said, hire him. It would be great for us. This is like when one of your friends dates someone who you find really unattractive and everyone finds them unattractive and their personality is attractive and there's just nothing about them that's likable, but your friend really, really likes them. That's if they hire Steve Nash, like that's what I think it'd be. It'd be like, hey, we know you failed miserably in Brooklyn. We know that your players didn't really respect you in Brooklyn, but we want you here. We want you in Toronto. You're Canadian. This is Canada. Come to Toronto. Who knows? Maybe you'll get along with Pascal Siakam and Fred VanVleet. I don't understand the move. I don't think that Steve Nash, and that'd be really sad, right? If he gets another coaching gig, but other guys in the league, dare I say it, minority head coaches in the league do not. Assistant head coaches, guys like Steven Silas, who really didn't get a fair share in Houston. I think that'd be bullshit. And it kind of it absolutely proves Steven Jackson's point. Well, not really, because they're firing Nick Nurse, who's also a white guy, to hire Steve Nash, another white guy. But yeah, that bothers me. And I don't take away anything from Nash as a player, but he wasn't a good head coach. And if he were to be a head coach again, I think go through, make these guys be assistants again. That's the thing that bothers me. By the way, that's my take on the whole JJ Redick being a head coach thing. Make him be an assistant. Redick's a genius.
Yeah.
Really, really solid professional career, but don't give him a head coaching job right out the gate. That wouldn't be right. All right. So we have 2 series left. I know we're going a little bit long here, but I do want to get to this. Denver up 3-0 against the Lakers. Miami up 3-0 against Boston. Let's start Denver, LA. I'll just talk narratives. You don't really have to break this series down too much. Nikola Jokic is cementing himself as the best player in the league now when the pressure's on the line. He has been insane in this series. Jamal Murray is reminding people, hey, guys, when I'm right, I'm a top 10 scoring point guard in this league. He's been just absolutely ridiculous in this series. Guys like Michael Porter Jr., Aaron Gordon are stepping up. But, Peter, we got to bring up the play of 2 former Nets. We got to bring up Bruce Brown and Jeff Green. Both have had some big moments for them. Bruce Brown a lot more than Jeff Green, by the way. I would say it's probably, from a contribution standpoint, 85% Brown, 15% Jeff Green. But those 2 guys, 2 former Nets, really well-liked within the Nets fan base. Are you happy that they're kind of doing what they were doing for the Nets, but on a championship squad, or does it make you pissed off that those 2 guys could have got a ring with the Nets, probably going to get a ring with the Nuggets?
I'm very pissed off. I defended Sean Marks earlier. I'm going to shit on him right now. Big mistake. Bruce Brown, we knew that he was a good player. Yes, a little undersized, but just as he's starting to hit the 3 ball, we decide, you know what? Let's not even offer this guy a contract after being a major glue guy for the team. I saw a tweet from someone that said the difference from the Denver Nuggets possibly making the finals and in an early playoff exit is a couple Bruce Brown big moments. I don't know how true that may be, but there's definitely something to that.
Yeah, he's just been huge. Every time they've needed a big play, if Jokic or Murray, if those guys are tired, he's just come up huge. And he does things. Michael Porter Jr. is a great player. Bruce Brown does things on offense as far as creating, getting to the rim, just hitting timely shots. He just does things that Porter Jr. can't really do. And the only other guy I want to shout out on Denver is Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, former champion with the Lakers. He's been shooting the lights out of the ball. On the Lakers side, LeBron, Anthony Davis, down 3-0. My thing is this, Peter. It's hard to expect teams that were pretty much put together in the middle of the year to go and win a championship. I wasn't surprised when Phoenix lost to Denver because they didn't have KD for half the year. It sort of made sense that we got swept, right? Because we were a makeshift Sean Marks put together team in the middle of the season. We had 4 guys that weren't starting at the beginning of the year that started in the playoffs for us. And then Claxton was the 5th. So I look at the Lakers and I think, yes, LeBron's great. He's 37. Anthony Davis is great. Austin Reeves is this amazing sort of story for guys like myself who haven't watched the Lakers the last few seasons. He has been really good. He's going to get a lot of money this offseason. But I almost think it was unrealistic to think that the Lakers, despite LeBron's greatness, could compete for a championship when they really changed up their roster midseason. I mean, you're talking about a team that had Russell Westbrook, moved him for guys like D'Angelo Russell, guys like Vanderbilt, and yeah, that's just sort of. Also, they started the year so terribly. I think they started like 2-10 or something. So just your reaction to LeBron pretty much about to go down in the Western Conference Finals. Denver can end that series tonight.
I think it's amazing. You look at this team. There was talks about LeBron possibly maybe wanting out of LA. Didn't look like they were going to make the playoffs. AD was hurt. They don't have a lot of draft picks. Remember, they were trying to get Kyrie from us, and the best thing they could offer is Westbrook and a first rounder. Then all of a sudden, they just rebuilt the team out of nowhere. Like Rob Pelinka, I hate to give him credit because I hate the Lakers, but you got to give the guy some fucking credit. Like this team looked like a lottery bound, and then all of a sudden, they're in the Western Conference Finals. If you're a Lakers fan, tough shit. You probably shouldn't even be, this far into the playoffs. But like it is amazing. Like I was pretty shocked. I'm not gonna lie.
The guy that they acquired that I think a lot of Nets fans wanted to get, he's been fucking really clutch for them throughout this postseason, is Rui Hachimura. He's been a really nice weapon off the bench, can score the basketball. He is a guy, he is essentially the person I would want in the Nets, right? He can hit the 3, he can play the 4, play the 5, he can play big, he can handle a little bit. I love Hachimura's game. This might be some amazing praise. To me, he's almost a mini Giannis. The way he plays,
that's a lot.
It is. The way that he plays, like he can play bully ball if you need him to. He's got a really nice touch around the rim. I like Rui Hachimura's game a lot. I thought that was a huge get for LA. But lo and behold, the Nuggets have been together for the past several years. Yeah, they've made some minor adjustments and tweaks to this roster, but the core of Murray, Jokic, Michael Porter Jr. is basically the same. You add a really good player in Aaron Gordon. You get great role guys like KCP, Bruce Brown, Jeff Green. Reggie Jackson's buried on their bench. All of a sudden, you have a cohesive unit with great leadership and great coaching in Mike Malone that, put together at the deadline team in the Lakers. You're just not going to compete with that. And then we go to the Eastern Conference. We look at the Heat and Celtics series. Holy shit. Who could have called this? Miami up 3-0. Jimmy Butler has just added to his incredible playoff legacy by mentally and physically dominating the Celtics. And now Boston, Peter, a team that I think 99% of fans thought was going to be in the finals once the Bucks went down, they're about to get swept by an 8th seed. And I'm just at a loss for words. How do you explain what's going on between the Celtics and the Heat right now?
You can't. Jimmy Butler is a god. Let's just, say it that way. He is not a regular season player. This man is a total god in the playoffs. He has that dog in him. And the guy's a leader. He's just willing this team. And it's like amazing because you look at his game, he's not the best 3-point shooter, right? You look at this team and he's just putting up these numbers. Remember, they made it to the finals in the bubble, and now it's like they're doing it again. It's like the Heat just win. The Heat just constantly win. One thing I will say, with the Western Conference team and the Eastern Conference teams, both teams up 3-0, both had a lot of continuity. They built themselves up with that core, like you said.
Sure.
They've had the same roster for the most part for like 3 years. They've built this core from whatever ground up, you could say, and it shows. It shows in the playoffs.
I know Nets fans like to make fun of our culture, right? Because that's a word that gets thrown around there. And realistically, our culture has changed significantly 3 times in the past 4 years, right? Because you had the D'Lo, Spencer Dinwiddie culture, which was different than the KD, Kyrie, Big Three, James Harden culture, which has now changed again to the Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, Jacques Vaughn led culture. In Miami, culture means something. Pat Riley is the president of basketball operations for the Miami Heat. He makes every basketball-related decision. He knows how to win. Eric Spoelstra, one of the best coaches in the NBA. He knows when you get what you give him, he's going to make the most of it. So the thing I'm most impressed, it's not even Jimmy Butler, because we sort of expect Jimmy Butler to rise to the occasion in the playoffs. It's the fact that all Miami role players have showed up, especially in the series against the Celtics. Gabe Vincent, Duncan Robinson, Max Strus, Caleb Martin. These 4 guys have been sensational in this series. Kyle Lowry's been clutch for them when they need him to. And by the way, Bam Adebayo, I look at Bam and I think the opposite of Joel Embiid. Embiid is dominant in the regular season, falls apart in the postseason, becomes less aggressive, basically becomes soft. Bam Adebayo, postseason starts happening, he basically becomes Jimmy Butler, but as a big man, and just goes to a place where he was manhandling the Celtics last night. I don't know if you saw the highlights. 2 alley-oops, one from Duncan Robinson, one from Max Strus, a spin move dunk on Jaylen Brown that sent Jaylen to the floor, some huge offensive rebounds. Bam Adebayo becomes a monster in the postseason. So I give Miami so much credit for the culture they've built there, for just getting everything they can out of the guys in their roster, bringing in a Kevin Love and having him bought out by the Cavs, bring him in for nothing, and all of a sudden he's making shots and he's helping out. Just really shocked at how cohesive and well the Heat have played. And then on the flip side, you look at the Celtics. This was their year, right? With Giannis out, and they win that series against the Sixers. You go 7 games. Tatum plays his ass off in Game 7. You have the pieces, right? It's the same team as last year, plus you have Malcolm Brogdon. So you should, for all intents and purposes, be better. And Joe Mazzulla just does not look like a good head coach at this moment. There are people in Boston calling for his head. The chemistry between Tatum and Jaylen Brown has never looked off. Throw Marcus Smart in the mix. The chemistry between those 3 guys just looks terrible. And the Celtics look like a fucking garbage fire right now. So let's go to Boston. I mean, what do you see with the Celtics team? Is it really the fact that Ime Udoka was a good coach versus Joe Mazzulla being a bad coach, or is there something more here?
I just think they ran into a hot team, facing the Heat at the wrong time, right? We've seen the Heat just be a buzzsaw in this playoffs. I do think there is a big difference in the coaching, right? I think everyone can say that. It's tough. It's tough. They had a situation that they thought they were going to have Ime coming in, and then all of a sudden they decide to hire someone from inside, Mazzola, and maybe that wasn't the right decision, but they had to make a decision pretty much on the fly. You have a team that just made it to the finals last year. You don't have a lot of time to pick a coach. So what do? You pick someone from inside your culture. Back to the word of culture, right? And, maybe that wasn't the right choice. But what do you do in that situation? I'm not sure.
Well, we essentially went the same route, right? Because we didn't hire someone.
Pretty much.
We brought up Jacques Vaughn, gave him a promotion. After the Game 3 loss, and Game 3 was a blowout win by Miami, in the press conference, I've never heard a coach admit that they lost the locker room. And that's essentially what Joe Mazzulla said in the post-game press conference. Is they asked him, they're like, hey, did you lose the locker room? He's like, yeah, I think that's what happened. And they're like, how did that happen? He's kind of like, I don't know. Insane thing for a coach to admit. The Celtics look broken right now. We are looking at a Denver-Miami championship, which will be a little bit fun because I don't know if you remember this, Peter. There's some bad blood between those two teams. Back when was it? I guess it was Marcus Morris, right? Or who was on the Miami Heat?
Our former Morris.
So our Morris was Markieff. So Markieff Morris was on the Heat. Jokic pretty much body slammed him when Morris wasn't looking, fucked him up a little bit. There was a lot of jawing between Marcus Morris, Markieff's brother, on Twitter, and the Jokic brothers, which is kind of some brother rivalry right there. But I would love to see that. You have the best team in the NBA and the best player in the NBA in Nikola Jokic going up against probably the biggest competitor in the NBA is Jimmy Butler. Some might say he's the biggest gamer in the NBA right now, given the pressure and the way that he's come through time and time again. So very excited for that matchup. All right. We talked about a lot on this episode. We covered everything related. But that's okay, Peter, because sometimes I have a lot to say. You know, I got to get it out. I can't hold it in. And I appreciate you coming on and joining me today. Not sure if Nick will be back next week. You know, Peter's always welcome to be our guest host. We appreciate him. We love him on Fireside Nets. And any final words for the audience out there?
We got a month to go to the draft, right? I think it's actually exactly 1 month from today. We got the draft. We got the free agency coming up right after that. Going to be a lot of changes going on with this franchise. Big changes in the NBA. Hold on. That's final words.
Hold on. 2 wise words from Peter. You can follow him at Nets Fans. You know, he is the host of the only Nets Fan podcast. This is Fireside Nets, brought to you by Empire Sports Media. I'm your host, Spen Harris. Thanks for listening, and as always, catch you on the Fireside.